totally know. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. All right, we're live. So, hey, everybody, welcome to today's Coffee Break Conversation. My name is Justin LaFranca. I'm editor-in-chief of the Morning Chalk Up. Joining me today, Spenser Mestel. He is a contributor to a lot of different publications, one of which is the Morning Chalk Up. We've got a Buzzfeed, New York Times, Vice. You've got your own sort of publication and blog going out on a regular basis, sort of newsletter on Tuesdays. Spenser, thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to kind of dive in here to a topic that's obviously top of mind for a lot of our listeners, readers, and a lot of the people in CrossFit right now, which is just the COVID pandemic, how gyms are responding, how CrossFit HQ as an organization, as the sort of parent entity of this global CrossFit community is responding to the pandemic. Obviously, it's a topic that has a lot of different strands and strides to it, but you recently published a piece where you looked at CrossFit's sort of, I don't want to say unequal, but their inconsistent response, I think is how you phrased it, over the last 9 to 10 months as the pandemic has been raging across the globe. I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of like intro this piece a little bit. I'm sure a lot of our readers have read it, or at least read portion of it, but kind of give us a little bit of the top line take on some of the elements here that you found when you were writing this.
Yeah, I think inconsistent is the perfect word for a number of reasons. One is that there's obviously just a huge transition in leadership, right? We had Greg Glassman running the show until June, and then Eric Rosa took over at a very turbulent time. And so that certainly shook things up in a number of different ways, but certainly in regards to the kind of top level Corona policies. And then also inconsistent in the sense that CrossFit has always had this model where gyms have a ton of autonomy. And so it's really been left up to them to make a lot of decisions about hygiene, about risk tolerance, about whether they're going to defy health ordinances and stay up. So there is really no unified CrossFit response. And as we'll get into, I think that is a problem. I think that ends up hurting the community and the gym owners and probably the brand in general. So yeah, that's where I would say we should start.
Okay. So, all right. Everybody knows this. CrossFit's unique in this certain sense that we're not like, we're not like Carl's Jr., where we're franchises and there's a parent organization saying, hey, look, this is how you make the hamburger, right? We're going to tell you a lot about the hamburger. We're going to tell you a lot about what goes into good hamburgers, but we're not going to tell you how to make a hamburger. I know that's kind of a silly metaphor here, but CrossFit is unique in that instance. Everybody here obviously knows that. So when we're looking at something like, posture and leadership and what should be said or what shouldn't be said, okay, I'm gonna dive right in here because I had this question. It's just it's totally top of mind. You already hit on it. Is like, should we really expect CrossFit HQ to kind of issue guidance to 14,000 gyms, or let's just say 6,500 or so gyms in the United States, other than like we encourage you guys not to break the law?
Yeah, I think the question to be asked then is, well, what do we want? Like, what's our outcome, and what do we expect from CrossFit? And I think, in June at the height of the Black Lives Matter protests, there was a lot of debate about whether an affiliate was worth it, both because CrossFit as an organization was not taking any kind of vocal stand about the protests or saying anything about racism in the US, and also not showing a lot of support for the affiliates during what I hope is the most difficult time in the history of the sport, right, with the pandemic. And so I think that if CrossFit took a more heavy-handed approach, it would benefit the affiliates. And so I'm happy to go into the specifics of that.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting, especially since you've talked to some of these gyms. I mean, we talk to gyms all the time. We're not always talking about the specific topic, but, what would owners want to see from leadership when it comes to a response to pandemic, or at least how to navigate it?
Yeah, so I think, there was a story today, actually, in Morning Chalk Up about these gym owners, one in Michigan, one in Maine, and they had these positive cases, and then they didn't know what to do, right? And I talked to a lot of gym owners for this article, and they're all saying the same thing, which is we don't know what policies we want to implement. We don't know how to keep our members safe. We don't know what to do if there's a positive case. Like, should we be locking down the gym? Should we just be socially distancing? What does contact tracing look like? There are so many unknowns, and to me, that is a space where CrossFit HQ could step in, right, and could actually provide guidance in the absence of all that certainty. So that's one part of it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, we come from political circles, and since you've been a reporter reporting on politics, and I worked in politics for a while, and I liken this sort of to the way the National Association of Broadcasters or the National Restaurant Associations issues guidance to a bunch of member organizations in a way which says, look, guys, like, I know you independent business, independent restaurant don't really have the resources to research policy. And that's why you paid money to join us. So let's call that the affiliation fee, the $3,000 a year membership fee to be a part of the National Restaurant Association. And they issue guidance all the time on legislation or guidance on implementation for specific things, specifically when it would affect that business type. So in this instance, you could see the Community Gyms Coalition stepping up and saying, hey, guys, I know we're not just CrossFit here. We're SoulCycle, we're other boutique fitness organizations, but here's how we see this playing out, or here's some guidance issues when it comes to this, or when it comes to this, or when it comes to this. I think that I tend to agree with you that that's an opportunity for CrossFit to lead from the front, but I don't know if it's realistic to expect that out of CrossFit, given the fact that the current owner's only been in for 6 months. And so are gym owners like asking for this kind of thing, or do they really have a serious expectation that CrossFit can deliver on that given the time frame?
I don't think they necessarily have an expectation, because this has always been how it is for CrossFit, right? It has always been such a hands-off approach that I don't think a lot of gym owners think to expect it from the organization. And so maybe if there were more demand from that side of it, we would see it. And, I'm glad you brought up the Community Gyms Coalition, because I talked to one of the CEOs who's part of that, the CEO of Anytime Fitness and a few other fitness companies, and they have just taken so much more drastic action, with social distancing, with limiting capacity. They monitor gyms to make sure that they're in compliance. It's a totally different model. And again, it's not an affiliate model, it's a franchise model. So kind of the contracts and the expectations there are different, but it certainly suggests that fitness companies can be doing a better job of making sure that gyms are complying in a way that I think benefits everyone. I don't think it's good when there are breakouts of cases at gyms. It makes it seem like they are less safe than they are. And I talked to, again, a lot of gym owners, and everyone agreed, even people who, not to get too political, but right, like obviously there's a wide spectrum of political beliefs within CrossFit, and even people who fall on the left,
right? Everyone
believed that these gyms can operate and operate safely.
Yeah, you bring up. Well, before I pivot the conversation somewhere else, there was one question that came in from a reader which said, and I'll take a stab at answering this too, because I think it's a matter of perspective here. But do you think that the Community Gyms Coalition has had any effect or been able to help CrossFit affiliates yet?
No. So I certainly agree that there's a lot of blame to go around for the situation we're in, and certainly the federal government deserves a lot of that blame. And these organizations, these businesses are failing and are on the verge of bankruptcy, and that's really scary. And I certainly sympathize so much with gym owners who, through no fault of their own, are in such a precarious position. But I think that CrossFit has used the Community Gyms Coalition as a way to avoid these more difficult decisions about masks and about social distancing and about enforcing health mandates, because we've seen that the government is too dysfunctional. And even in Joe Biden's recent $1 trillion stimulus plan, I don't believe there's any aid earmarked for gyms. Right. Or the legislation that the Community Gyms Coalition was pushing, I don't think has even gotten a sponsor in Congress yet. And so certainly they deserve it. I'm not saying that they don't, but I'm saying that that is not the most realistic path forward for us.
Yeah, so I'm not going to disagree with you. No, I don't think it's made much of a difference yet, but I have to applaud the effort in the sense that this is the most politically involved that CrossFit as a company, as a parent organization, has been recently. Yes, CrossFit has taken to task Coke, Coca-Cola, other big soda entities, NIH spending, etc. But I could call those sort of fringe elements of political discourse. I consider this to be like We're talking stimulus money. We're talking something that's very in vogue and obviously very significant when it comes to the livelihood of an individual gym owner. So this is, I think, their biggest step in becoming directly involved in the political system. Putting together a coalition of roughly 15,000 locations, I think, is a huge step forward. So no, I don't think it's made a difference tangibly, but in the sense that they are now moving themselves into a direction where they're regularly putting out op-eds and thought pieces, where they're regularly issuing statements from spokespeople for the coalition, I think is a massive step forward. So I view it ultimately as a positive, but I don't disagree with you. But I do see it through that lens of saying, look, from my time in Capitol Hill, I'm going to go, yeah, okay, maybe some of this stuff is a little bit perfunctory, and maybe some of these, these statements coming out there are wonky political statements that I used to write, but they're trying. And I think that's fantastic, because if this is where we're starting, 4 or 5 years from now, I think they could have a lot stronger arm in lobbying the federal government for what these types of gyms need. And it's clear right now that they need either to be allowed to be open, or they need special type of funding, because quite frankly, you can't make rent if you're 25% operable.
Absolutely. And I would say that this legislative attempt, I think, is more performative than substantive. And I would say maybe something that would feel more substantive to me is just if HQ had helped gyms apply for PPP loans. That's a process that I heard from owners. I didn't go through it myself, obviously, but I certainly heard that it was complicated, that it was expensive, that it took a long time. And I think that's where you saw a lot of direct aid to gyms that helped them stay afloat. But again, to the best of my knowledge, HQ wasn't doing anything to help gyms navigate that process. And certainly logistically, it's difficult, right? There are 6,000 gyms in the US alone. But again, to me, it's interesting we're seeing them push this legislation that I just don't see it having a future, as opposed to more on the ground, like kind of grassroots support.
Yeah, without getting too into the weeds here, the way I see this piece of legislation like this is, yes, they may get a sponsor. Yeah, they may get a couple co-sponsors to move it through the House, but ultimately it's going to get attached as a rider to a stimulus bill, or it's going to be attached to an omnibus. So, the likelihood that it's going to get passed as an up-down vote by itself, don't really see that happening very much. But like the defense authorization. Wow, we're getting really political here now. Like the defense authorization bill that got passed, included stimulus measures from the House, and so it's like, I think that's the ultimate hope here is that it gets attached as part of the Christmas tree. So, but
sure. You are the political insider.
well, we could go. Not most of our listeners and readers are not interested in the meatball or the sausage making process to that detail, and talking about omnibuses. So, let's pivot a little bit here. I've been covering CrossFit HQ for, we'll be sunsetting our 5th year here in a few weeks. Covering CrossFit HQ as a beat isn't really exactly what it is, but I've been paying very close attention to what they've done and what they haven't done. This current administration is 7 or so months in, and that's very short when you consider the type of transition that had to have occurred there. Not only the fact that they had a games to deal with, but a pandemic to deal with and all these other things here. How have you seen CrossFit's response and what they're doing shift between the end of the Glassman era and now into the Rosa era? What kind of observations have you made personally, but also based on the conversations that you've had with other gym owners? Yeah,
I don't think there's any denying that Greg Glassman was borderline and outright coronavirus denier, right? And so what he was saying at the beginning of the pandemic essentially boiled down to strongly suggesting that CrossFit could protect you from the coronavirus. And I think that is a mindset that we see very pervasive within the community still. And I think a lot of CrossFitters are embarrassed to say if they got sick, because I think that it is seen as saying that you're not fit, because those things just became equated at the very beginning. And so I think that there is a stigma into even admitting that you've had coronavirus or that you got sick. And Greg Glassman on a Zoom call was telling affiliates in Italy, what I would do is pretend to follow the regulations in place and then do whatever I wanted in the gym. And again, I think we see that also very pervasive within the community. I think that I think people were probably going to do that anyway, but certainly getting permission from the top to flout local health guidelines was not a great look. And now, in the Rosa administration, certainly we're seeing a more measured response, and certainly statements that are more in line with encouraging people to follow the guidelines. But, the way I start this article in Buzzfeed is talking about Athletes Unleashed, a gym in Buffalo, where they, openly defied the guidelines. The owner ripped up the fine that he got from the Erie County Health Department on Fox News. It was very brazenly and proudly not following these guidelines. And then he lost his affiliation from CrossFit, but not because of that, but because he sent this very racist email to a customer. So I think that what we've seen from the Rosa administration is a lot more delicate handling of issues around race, but then still no desire to want to wade into the kind of more political aspects of coronavirus.
Yeah, that's fair. I remember covering that story and looking at this situation, and really where the catalyst for CrossFit's involvement kind of came as Dave Castro had posted this video of him ripping this up, which is sort of a tacit approval of that action from from the most prominent figure at CrossFit HQ, and I think that's what sparked caused people to look into it, and then once they looked into this guy, then they found this local news agency that had reported the email, and then it became kind of a thing. And so in a sense, they almost, it's like if Dave hadn't actually reposted this video, he probably wouldn't have come to our attention, because now it blew it, 750,000+ followers. And we hear a lot of the things that are going on, but we certainly don't hear everything. And so that was kind of an instance where it was interesting, because CrossFit's sort of giving approval for that kind of action, or at least it sends a signal to a lot of people that its direct general manager of sport is okay with it. And I think that's kind of one of the things that you're pointing out as an inconsistency from CrossFit. It's like, what is the real, what is CrossFit's HQ's stance on handling the coronavirus in your gym? I think if you ask that question, you get to 10 different people, you get 10 different answers, right?
Absolutely. And, what I think is so interesting about that episode is that it showed, CrossFit always said, these are affiliates, we're going to just leave them alone. They can run their gyms how they want. And that episode really broke that spell, right? Because they're saying, if you send a racist email, we recognize that that's bad for our brand and we're going to kick you out. And so then I think the next question you have to ask is, well, why are we not having any kind of enforcement or punishment or oversight of people who are breaking these health guidelines? And there was a judge said that the closure of Athletes Unleashed was arbitrary and capricious, so they are allowed to open up at 100% capacity. The owner said that he would follow the guidelines. I checked his Instagram yesterday, and they are not masking, they're not following social distance guidelines. So again, that's not surprising, right? Someone who is so proudly publicizing himself breaking the rules is probably not going to follow the rules, especially when a judge has just essentially told him that he doesn't have to.
Yeah, that's I didn't realize that, but he's no longer an affiliate now, so I guess it's not my purview anymore from our coverage. CrossFit has always been, CrossFit as a community, at least in the United States, and I'll only speak to that because every other country has its own ecosystem that is adopted based on their culture and the business mentality of that country. So, but here in the United States, it's always been a bit libertarian, which is fine, and that's probably even one of the reasons why it was able to grow to the extent that it was. The barrier to entry, as you pointed out in the story, is relatively low economically, but it's also we're going to give you the opportunity to succeed or fail on your own. Right. So if it costs $3,000 for an affiliation, by the way, that's only $3,000 to get the name of CrossFit. That doesn't include the $30,000, $50,000, or $100,000 it costs to actually start up a gym, between the the equipment that you have to buy and people, or just obtaining and remodeling a location that's going to suit your needs. But be it as it may, it's a relatively lower cost of entry than it does when you're thinking about opening up a franchise for Chick-fil-A or a Carl's Jr. or something, when you need $50,000 or $100,000 in cash minimum just to even fill out the application. Yeah. But its libertarian roots have sort of allowed it to thrive in a sense. So, I also get this sense from gym owners that they don't really want to be told. I think some do. And I think that in a group of 6,000 plus individual owners, you're going to have a very large spectrum of people who are vocal when they are not getting what they want, right? They're not getting the type of guidance or support from HQ, maybe in guidance for PPP, or maybe guidance for distancing, or guidance for cleaning, et cetera. But, isn't it reasonable to suggest that if majority of these gyms open following a libertarian mindset that most people don't necessarily want this stuff from CrossFit. And if that's the case, should CrossFit take the extra expenditure to increase those type of benefits or those type of actions, sort of thing?
Yeah, I would say first, whether gym owners want to or not, they have to follow the law. And for CrossFit to tacitly allow them not to is wrong. And, we certainly saw a different story from the CrossFit Risk Retention Group, who was sending out emails saying if you open against the guidance of local health authorities, you could lose your insurance coverage. So I think, on some level, they're recognizing that outright flouting of laws is not acceptable. But in terms of what they want, I can't say what they want. I'm not one of those gym owners, but I can say that I think that they would benefit enormously from CrossFit setting the rules, because that would mean that they don't have to, and they could project that responsibility onto HQ for policies that might not be so popular. So to me, what this really boils down to is masks, right? People do not want to wear masks in the gym. I wear a mask. My gym, CrossFit Virtuosity, I guess it's not affiliated anymore, Virtuosity in Brooklyn, you have to wear a mask the entire time you're there. And if you take a sip of water or you pull it down underneath your nose, the owner or the coach asks you to leave, to step outside. I was not looking forward to that. I was going to try and avoid it and stay outside as much as possible. But you get used to it. And, to me, it is a very small price to pay for being able to go to a gym, especially in New York, considering the March, April, May situation that we had. But kind of to pivot back to your question, if HQ said, you have to wear a mask in a gym, then the owners would not be responsible. When their members got upset, they'd say, it's not up to us. We're going to lose our affiliation if we don't follow this. And also, you can't leave our gym and go find another CrossFit that doesn't have this mask guideline, which I know people are doing right now. Right? So to alleviate this economic pressure on them. And also, I talked to an affiliate owner in Kansas, and she's right next to a military base. And the military base said all soldiers have to be wearing masks pretty much at all times in public, right? Much stricter than state or federal guidelines. And so the members at her gym, with that as a baseline, were much more willing to comply with mask ordinances. And so if HQ did that and had a PR push and had Rich Froning and Matt Fraser and Tia Claire Toomey in masks on their Instagram saying, this is what we need to be doing, that would go a long way. And that would probably influence people who are not going to listen to Dr. Fauci or to the governor of their state.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point there. Giving owners political cover, essentially, and I always tell this to our writers. I'm like, look, blame it on me. Say your editor nixed it. I am also, but I'm saying it's easier to say no when you say, well, it's like, so and so said no, and it's kind of like they could do that. Now that hasn't been CrossFit's policy in the past. It would be a very stark shift for them as an organization, because just because Rosa took over doesn't mean everything changes overnight. And that would be a pretty fast shift, because I don't know, to my knowledge, I don't know what would have constituted. I know there's some legal elements that would constitute revoking an affiliate's affiliation. But to my knowledge, there hasn't been a lot of that's ever really happened. It would give them cover to be able to institute that across the board. But I don't know how that would work. Personally, I don't know.
I don't know either. But again, I think that we can all agree if big, and I talked to Pat Vellner and Noah Olson, both of them said, we personally are not too concerned about dying from corona, but we wear masks. We recognize that is what we need to do. And Noah's dad is also an affiliate owner in Miami. And he said, I'm extremely fit, but I'm about to turn 66. And so when people get close to me, I back up. And so if we had these elite athletes out there vocally saying, masks work, we need to be wearing masks. Yes, you can exercise in a mask. It is not going to kill you. Maybe you're not going to PR your Fran time, but you can certainly work out at a very high intensity level. That in and of itself, even if CrossFit didn't say, and will revoke, your affiliation for not doing X, Y, and Z, that would help. But again, there's so much reluctance on their part to do anything like that.
Yeah, that does seem to be the case. Now, I want to pivot a little bit and just kind of talk about, we play inside baseball a lot here. We talked to a lot of different people, athletes and coaches, and through the course of our own reporting, through the course of our own story creation process, and just staying in the know and kind of being involved in what's going on behind the scenes, whether it's getting reported directly or indirectly through those conversations. But you're a guy who spends a lot of time talking and researching and writing about CrossFit and having conversations. What do you think, or what are you hearing about what's going on internally with CrossFit in this struggle between being more hands-on and issuing more guidance, and others having less interest in or a distaste even for issuing more guidance and being involved?
It seemed to me, again, certainly from the outside, that there isn't necessarily a large faction within CrossFit that wants to be more hands-on. And my impression, again, this is just my impression, I haven't confirmed this with Rosa himself, is that he came into it knowing that that was the case and not being critical of that, of respecting that business model and wanting to perpetuate it.
Okay, fair enough. To my knowledge, I don't really know. This hasn't been one of these things that we've really dived into as a specific topic, mostly because there's been so many other top of mind focuses in and around CrossFit news, and one of which is just telling the story of what's going on inside of the affiliates, which is who's obviously bearing the brunt of the economic windfall that's happening. Well, not windfall, the opposite of that, the economic sort of tsunami that's happening against them. And so, I don't really have any inside information on that. And I'd be curious to see more about what those internal conversations are looking like, because, there is a new guard there that is taking a different posture. And there's obviously a lot of old employees that have been there for a long time. I don't know to what extent that is the case. Certainly what we don't hear from is we don't hear from a lot of the individual affiliate reps that often. Now, I think they're talking with with the affiliates themselves and not broadcasting those conversations. So I wonder to what extent, and I certainly haven't asked, but they've been nominating affiliate reps in the regional level, and there's a new GM of affiliates, and the GM of training is Nicole Cara. I wonder to what extent those conversations are happening that we're just not hearing about. But as far as public statements are concerned, yeah, we're just not seeing them. I mean, we're seeing them in bits and pieces, but no official directive has certainly come across my desk. And, that usually is the case, that if something that specific happens, that we hear about it, and I have not heard of anything.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the affiliate reps, because there was an affiliate rep in Northern California for Diablo CrossFit. Craig Howard, I believe, is his name. So, to kind of pivot to finances for a second, what I find interesting is that the incentives are not great right now. Obviously, a lot of gyms are under financial pressure, but then we saw Diablo CrossFit not follow the guidelines, open against the guidance of the health officials in Northern California. And then a member started a GoFundMe and raised 10 times as much money than the fine itself cost, right? So for some gyms, it's actually more lucrative to break these policies, to advertise that, and then to fundraise than to just follow the guidance, which is obviously not great from a public health standpoint. And also, kind of speaking of finances, CrossFit's in a really tough position right now. The main source of income for them is affiliate fees, and we saw a huge wave of disaffiliations in June. Probably still trickling in now, and then also seminars. And seminars, the level 1 has gone online, but a lot of those seminars for a very long time were canceled completely. So I think they're not in a great position economically to be able to help the affiliates. And again, I don't want to put too much blame on them. Everyone is in a bad position. I think we should have sympathy and empathy for them. But, and I guess, sorry, to pivot back now to Craig Howard at Diablo CrossFit. So he was breaking these guidelines, and then he was a district rep, and he's not any longer. HQ told me that he has taken a leave of absence. He never responded to my interview request, so I don't know what his side of the story is. But I think that there is not a cohesive vision or plan within the organization, just based on how much turmoil there is, even at the affiliate rep level.
Yeah, that was an interesting story, and sort of points out, look, like if you're going to go, it's certainly not a good look to have one of your affiliate reps and a spokesperson for the Community Gyms Coalition to be flouting the fact that they are breaking the law. That's certainly not a good look for CrossFit as a company, or from a branding and messaging standpoint. I don't think that ended. That ended. So that's kind of how that played out. But anyways, yeah, Spencer. So here we are. We're not far. We're 10 months. Effectively, in 2 days, we'll be almost 10 months exactly to the point where California first started issuing its closure order statewide. We recently, or it was either this morning or yesterday morning, highlighted a story about Seattle lifting its 8-week-long closure mandate for gyms and fitness centers. And they've phase 1 of reopening for that closure now allows for private training only, or one person per 500 square feet of gym space. So if you have 1,000 square feet, you can have 2 people in your gym. And if you have something less than 1,000, then I suppose that only means 1. And it's still for private training only. So, this would be sort of contrary to the typical affiliate model, which is, group classes and group fitness. But I suppose you could take that to a one-on-one basis and fill out your whole calendar. Be it as it may, I have to say that is absurd. I think that is just the stupidest thing ever. And I am a person that advocates wearing masks and observing social standards, etc. But I think that is just moronic. I'm sorry. If you can go to a Home Depot, and I've gone to a Home Depot because I spent some of this precious time that I have at home, doing some cosmetics to my aging condo that is built 50 years ago and needs constant support and staying, pretty, whatever. So I stand in Home Depot line, and it's like, in the line, in the 6 feet, people walk next to you the whole time. And it's like, yo, if this passes based on this thing that we're doing right here, talking and breathing, I guess, or breathing really hard because we're working out. How is it possible that is like, why? And I think that's what frustrates gym owners so much. I think it's just, they look at that and they go, that's just flies in the face of reason. We feel like we're being completely targeted by these type of mandates, which are not equal. They're not even. And they're like, how is it okay that I can pass 50 people at a Home Depot while standing in line for 15 minutes to check out? But like, you're telling me that you can only have private sessions only and 1 person per 500 square feet? Christ, if they issued that at a Home Depot, I think that we'd have a lot less people hanging out there. But doesn't that now we're getting off the topic of the story, but off the top of CrossFit's response. But I feel like that's the reason why there's guys like Robbie De Niro out there just going, this is BS. I'm not going to follow this because this is stupid.
Yeah, first, let me say your condo looks great. I think you've done a great job.
Thank you so
much. I'm not here to defend these health guidelines. I certainly think that there's a lot of validity to the frustration that gym owners feel because these standards are not necessarily based in science, in research, or in empirical evidence. But where I get nervous is that I don't necessarily know if the response to that is for then each gym owner to decide what is safe. And I think we've seen that a lot. I've certainly seen those voices within Morning Chalk Up, which is, well, we consulted with this engineer and therefore it's safe. And that piecemeal, everyone's an expert approach, to me is not substantively better than what I agree with you are ridiculous policies, right? And policies that are setting businesses up to fail, right. Being open nominally, but not actually, and then not receiving any support. Like, that's unacceptable. And again, if I have to blame someone, I'm going to blame the federal government for not giving us reliable guidelines at the beginning.
Yeah, I look, the speed of rolling out and taking it seriously, it had its own ramifications. But we're now into the point where these city and local officials are making these decisions. Here's a great example. They said Boston gyms couldn't be open, but Massachusetts says they can. And you're like, okay, the federal government's not the one going out there and saying, one thing or another. They may have their own baseline standards and stuff, but like Seattle, 20, like what? And then after that, they can go to 25%. You're like, how does anybody even survive? And if I could wish anything from CrossFit HQ, it would that they would take that absurdity to task. Like I wish Rosa had put it on bed in USA Today or another publication and said, this is bullshit. Like, cause it is. I mean, I'm 100% for wiping things down, HEPA filters, for other measures that maybe even go above and beyond. And we're seeing gyms that are going above and beyond. They are doing way more than other people because, hey, by the way, the pee pipe that I picked up the other day at Home Depot, I'm pretty sure nobody went and wiped that down before I went and bought it, but like, your 45-pound blade has been wiped down like 35 times by the end of the day. And you're like, I think that's where people feel this this revulsion towards some of these statistics, not statistics, but of these mandates. And I wish that if I could wish anything, like I said, from CrossFit is like, yo, then Home Depot's got to wipe down all their PVC pipes or all of the loose screws that somebody touches throughout their thing, because that would be consistent. And like, that is not even like blowing it out of proportion, because, go to any place. What about a cereal box at the grocery store? What about a shirt from one of the boutiques that's still currently open? What about, just like, I guess you could keep going on with this, but like, I wish Rosa was out there talking about that and just saying, you know what, guys, like put him on CNBC, put him on Fox News and be able to talk about those sort of things. Like if I was looking for more guidance, I don't know if as a gym owner, I'd want more guidance. I'd like the freedom personally, but that's just where I come from. I like the freedom of being able to make my own decisions. But if I was asking for something from the top, it would be more like that. It'd be like, go out there and be in the vanguard, Rosa. Like go out there and be the tip of the spear talking about how stupid these things are, because they are stupid. Especially if it's stupid for us, it's stupid for everybody.
Yeah, maybe you should get on CNBC and let them have it. But I would,
I'm signing up.
To push back a little, I would say, I talked to a gym owner in Virginia that has a mask mandate, and he said flat out, I don't enforce it. And he said, it's just not practical. One, I think that's absurd, right? Just from my gym, I've seen that if you take it seriously, people will do it. And two, that's what gyms are. Gyms are there to correct people's behavior when it's unsafe. And so I think that, especially within the CrossFit community, there was this feeling that these guidelines were bullshit and we didn't need to follow them. And that certainly contributed to where we are now. And so, yeah, maybe it's not that productive to focus on that element, but I think we need to recognize that like it is serious here and it didn't have to be. And if people had taken this more seriously at the beginning and done what they were supposed to and not been such babies about it, then we wouldn't be at a situation where we're demanding that Home Depot wipe down every PVC pipe, right? But again, there were policies that we know work. We gave people the option of following them. They refused to follow them, and now it is becoming more what you would consider draconian, but these aren't unrelated.
Yeah. Well, we're Americans, and so we don't like to be told what to do. So, yeah.
No, we do not.
No, we do not. That's sort of a very important part of our history and who we are and what makes us up as an electorate and as individuals. Our own, spirit of independence runs deep in this country. So, anyways,
I would say, sorry, go ahead. Finish.
No. I was going to close it up. You put your last.
I was just going to say, CrossFitters certainly we do have that libertarian DNA in us, but I think also we are very receptive to feedback. Right? We want to be coached. We want to be told what is going to make us safe. And so if we trust the person who's telling that, if you have rapport with your coach, you will believe that person and you will do what ultimately benefits you. And HQ could be in that position and has chosen not to be.
That's a fair point. That's a nice way of putting it. I will say that, my opinion is that they could be more vocal about these regulations, rules, I should say, and mandates that are being given that I honestly feel like are very unfair to gyms. They're specifically targeting gyms and fitness centers. It's obviously not just CrossFit. It's any boutique fitness. And I think they could be more vocal in opposing those and giving people and giving owners the belief that they got their back. If I hear the captain, rallying and going out there and saying things and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I appreciate the fact that they're being vocal. It may end up not changing anything, but sure, I feel like I've got a buddy on my side, and I think that would assuage a lot of individuals who are perhaps less enthusiastic about CrossFit's response. Just as a way of showing people you got their back. And sometimes that's, I mean, they don't have the ability to change 50 states or thousands of cities' policies, but they do have a large voice. They do have a megaphone, and they can let everybody know that they are going to do whatever they can to do that. And I think they've left that up to a lot of gym owners to say those things, to say this is BS, and that something as crazy as one person per 500 square feet is like way more strict than a 6 feet rule or a 10-foot rule.
Absolutely. And again, I don't want to necessarily focus on the outliers and assume that they're what is standard. So yeah, we can look at those policies and be like, that's absurd. That's clearly setting gyms up to fail. But I think that there are a lot of policies in a lot of places that make sense. And I think in New York, the fact that I can work out with the mask on is uncomfortable. It's not my ideal. But again, I'm grateful that we can make it happen. I'm very grateful to my owner for keeping us safe and for enforcing these rules that, again, are a relatively minor inconvenience to allow me to do something in a pandemic that I did not think was going to be possible. Well,
there we go. Spenser, I've enjoyed our time talking about this. This has been fun. We obviously still have a long ways to go when we're getting through this. And gyms are in various stages of that, which is going to obviously dominate a lot of the news cycle for us. Is talking about CrossFit specifically and stuff. But it's been fun catching up. This has been enjoyable for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. We had a little bit of a lively debate here on some of the more ludicrous elements of fitness limitations. But one key takeaway I think is that CrossFit can do more for their affiliates, not necessarily in direct aid support, but in how they're messaging the pandemic and how they're issuing guidance to gyms, et cetera. But we'll leave that to them to decide how they're going to do it. So Spenser, thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for being a part of CrossFit community, for being a Morning Chalk Up contributor, and for coming on and hanging out for a little bit.
You didn't thank me for my shirt, but that's fine. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for wearing the misprint too, the one that wasn't supposed to go out as it.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that's a misprint shirt. It wasn't supposed to be purple. It was supposed to be blue.
Oh, wow. I guess I never got the redo, so I'll be waiting on that in the mail.
No, he sent out an email, which is like, hey, sorry, we messed up, but if you want to get a new one, click here. You just didn't follow the instructions. You don't open our emails. I don't know what to tell you.
I wanted that limited edition.
It is limited edition. There was like maybe 50 of them that got printed or something. So you have like one of those like mint coins that's worth like $10,000. You should sell that.
I'm never taking it off.
That's going to be disgusting, but eventually. So anyway, Spenser, thanks. Always great catching up with you. Join us. I don't know when the next one will be, but we'll have one in a couple of weeks. If you got any suggestions or people that you want to have on for lively debate, discussion, etc., shoot us a note. Leave it in the comments on Facebook or on YouTube, and we'll try our best to get them on. So anyways, thanks again, Spenser. We'll talk to you soon.